Here we are again. We look at breaking the laws of evolution, right? Look at this topic that's confused a lot of people, and just because I'm using the Bible in this video does not mean I'm trying to add, remove, record for posterity any part of the Bible. Again, read it off for yourself. Get a King James Bible. Starting on Genesis 1 here, in the Old Testament. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth." And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good, right? So he creates the plants and everything. The third day, but look what happens next. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven, and divide the day from the night. And let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven, to give light upon the earth." And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. Again, we see grass is made even before the stars. And he makes the whales and the fowl and then the land animals, right? Again, just the order of things in Genesis chapter 1 should prove to you God knows the future, right? Because now, what happened before, again, before these ideas even existed, God said his word to destroy them, right? You read the first chapter. So I want to do a little book review as well, and I'll just go into my own little list here, showing, again, genetics especially destroys evolution once and for all, right? You shouldn't even humor them, right? Again, it's good to give reasons and so forth, but you shouldn't actually humor it as if it were serious. It's a lie, just like any other. So let's look at the book itself that we're going to review here. 20 Evolutionary Blunders, Dangers and Difficulties of Darwinian Thinking by Randy. Again, I'm going to say it wrong. J. Gugliuzza. Probably said that wrong. Sorry about that. I picked this one up. It was so affordable. So let's look at the back. 20 Evolutionary Blunders. Darwinism has ruled science for over 150 years, but few today know the details of its less than stellar track record. Its proponents, after false predictions, plug colossal gaps of evidence with pure imagination, and in some unfortunate cases even use it to justify taking innocent lives. And 20 Evolutionary Blunders, Harvard graduate Randy here shines a light on many of these shortcomings. And it goes on, learn how Hawk's genes contradicted Darwinist predictions. Fossil forgery routinely occurs in the evolutionary community. Useless biological organs turn out to be functional, and other interesting stories from the history of evolutionary theory. Rather than supporting Darwin's theory, an honest look at the evidence consistently undermines it. Written in 20 brief chapters, this book also is insightful but broad, offers an insightful broad evaluation of Darwinism and its scientific merits, right? So again, it's pretty thin. 20 Evolutionary Blunders, pretty thin, pretty easy read. So it is exactly what the title says. It's got 20 chapters, 20 Evolutionary Blunders. It could have more, which I'll take a look. I think it did have a few that I haven't heard of that much, even though I've looked at a lot of, creation type information and seminars, especially on YouTube and other places. And I picked this one up. I think it's a good supplement to this other book I got for creation science, Zombie Science. Now, there is some overlap between the two, but there actually is some different information in 20 Evolutionary Blunders, since the zombie science is focused on particularly the old frauds that they're still pushing. So there are some different ones here that are not being pushed. Which one? I would say zombie science is a little more thorough, but like I said, they have different... there's not a complete overlap. There is some differences here. I would say because of the price, I think I got this one for like $5 on Amazon, which at that price I couldn't say no, right? So that alone, so the price alone lets it get up, even though it's not, as much information, I would say, on certain things. Just the price alone, you could buy, multiple copies, give them out to schools, Goodwill, your friends, your neighbors, your family. I think it's you know, pretty simple read. They'll know exactly just by the title. No false advertisement, right? Exactly what it is. So I'd give it around 7.5 just because of the price that I was able to get it for. And when you start building up our libraries, you see that Ken Holman's videos disappear in one day. Steven Anderson, Alex Jones, and now they're even trying to get rid of Matt Walsh. You won't be able to find any Christian information on the internet pretty soon. So start building our libraries here. So I'm going to look at, obviously I'm not going to give you the whole book. I'll look at one part, and one of them is online for everybody to go see. But I'll look at one, and then I'll just make my own little list here. So I'm not giving this whole book here. But I'd say around 7.5 just because of the price. It's not as in-depth as the other one, but it's got a lot of pretty good quotes as well from the evolutionists. The crazy things they believe, I tell you. Again, these evolutionists are so delusional. Here's one that I didn't know about. I'm going to share with you here. Well, at least I don't think I've heard of it. It's been so long. They even started making laws of evolution, right? Because they honestly believed their delusional religion of evolution. But notice you don't hear about that anymore, do you? I wonder why. Because, like evolution, the laws of evolution are false, folks. So let's look here. Here's one of the points here. Evolutionist Louis Dolo said, an organism cannot return, even partially, to a previous state. Sorry about that. Evolutionist Louis Dolo said, an organism cannot return even partially to a previous state already realized in its ancestral series. Today, this is known as Dolo's Law, right? But as usual, the evolutionary prediction failed. Many creatures are found with features that their ancestors had lost. One example is mandibular teeth that reappeared in frogs after supposedly being absent in their lineage for 220 million years. One evolutionist said, there is no support for the model of irreversible evolution, Dolo's Law. Again, breaking the laws of evolution, right? Another failure. Dolo's Law said evolution cannot even be reversed in part, right? Not even partially, because it's so unlikely for it to happen one direction. It's even more impossible in the backwards direction. Again, that's assuming what? That's assuming evolution is real. It's not real, folks. What you do have is adaptation, programmed information, right? That fits creation, doesn't fit evolution. The law of evolution is broken. Why haven't they mentioned these laws? Because they're trash, just like evolution. Another failed prediction you'll never hear about. So I'm going to look at some of the ones that I think are cool, that I use a lot. I shared with you one from the book. I gave it 7.5. I suggest you buy it. 7.5 is not bad. I suggest you get it because it's easy to give out just for this. The size of it, it's an easy read. Obviously, there's more they could put in here. They could make a, enhanced version of it, add more examples, add some creationist predictions, and at the end put a salvation page, and then I'll give it a 9 or 10, right? But the price alone makes it worth the buy. I recommend you get it. So let's look at Job 40. Behold now Behemoth, which I made with thee, he eateth grass as an ox, right? So we saw in the beginning God made plants even before the animals, right? And he gave them that as well to eat, right? Again, creation, design, right? Only a fool would say the animals existed before their food supply, right? Only a fool would say that. Well, guess what evolutionists said? They said grass didn't exist when you had these large dinosaurs roaming around, right? They didn't eat grass. Only a fool would say something like that. Here's the article, creation.com. Evolution textbooks have long taught that fossil evidence shows grasses evolved around 55 million years ago after the extinction of the dinosaurs, right? Get that. New evidence leaves the evolution textbooks with a dramatic, grassy time travel conundrum. Researchers have discovered fossilized dinosaur droppings that contain the remains of at least 5 types of grass, right? So not only did it exist, but they ate it, which is exactly what the Bible would say, right? We see New Scientist magazine or whatever publication said that artistic impressions of dinosaurs grazing on grassy plains were considered as bad as depictions of dinosaurs with caveman. But examination of the dung shows that they didn't indeed eat grass, So another failed prediction, a blunder of evolution, right? But I also want to point out, right, this article also points out, how did dung get preserved fast enough if fossils take 10,000 years to get half an inch fossilized? Again, a flood is the only answer, folks. But on top of that, we saw in the Bible what? Behemoth ate grass. So not only is it a failure of evolution, it also highlights the Bible is correct. That's why I think it's one of the best examples that you can use out there. But it also shows what? Out of order fossils. Grass wasn't supposed to exist yet. See how evolution's not real? They can just change the order because it's imaginary whenever they want. And then they claim that nothing's found out of order. It's a total lie, folks. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, New Testament. But God hath chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise, and God hath chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things which are mighty, and base things of the world, and things which are despised hath God chosen, yea, and things which are not, to bring to naught things that are, that no flesh should glory in his presence. But of him are ye in Christ Jesus, who of God is made unto us wisdom, in righteousness, and sanctification, and redemption, that according as it is written, he that glorieth, let him glory in the Lord. Again, we see God uses foolish things to confound the wise, right? And weak things to confound the mighty, and base things. Yay. Well, let's look at the next one I'm going to use here against the evolutionists here, against their lies. Let's look at this creation.com article again. The next example I'm going to use, we looked at Dolo's law, destroyed. Grass, destroyed evolutionists. Now the platypus, right? A animal, totally strange looking, right? Totally strange, totally destroyed their predictions, right? In fact, when the first platypus specimen reached England in 1799, it was long dead, it was regarded as a hoax. A hoax on the scientific community, right? They couldn't believe it. Experts of the day could not reconcile the fact that a duck-billed mammal with webbed feet and claws and a beaver-like tail could really exist. One zoologist was so sure that it was fraudulent, he tried to remove the duck's bill from the pelt. His scissor marks can still be seen on the original in London's museum, right? Again, we see evolutionists couldn't even believe the platypus was real, right? Because, again, the platypus has all these different features from common design, from common creation, right? It's not a duck. It's not a beaver. It lays eggs. It's not a snake. It's got venom. It's not a snake, right? It's got fur. It's got all these different designs put together. He tried to cut off the beak with scissors, folks. Evolutionists are fools. God has made foolish the wisdom of this world. Let's look at Genesis chapter 1. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created him, them. He them. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. And God said, behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of a tree, yielding seed, to you it shall be for meat. So we see here God made man in his own image, right? Which brings us to our next one. Again, evolution is a total fraud. Let's look at the next one.
Okay, here's another great, this is a prediction an evolutionists made. So here's another one we can see if it came true. This guy was a famous evolutionist. His name was J.B.S. Haldane. In 1949, he said that evolution could never produce various mechanisms such as the wheel and magnet, which would be useless till fairly perfect. At that time, the cell was still pretty much...
Oh, that was a little low. Let's try it here again. Famous evolutionists, right? Predict it's never going to produce a mechanism like a wheel.
Prediction. Well, we know that that's been refuted, but this next slide, you know, the wheel, a magnet, gears, and then if you look at this next slide, look what they found in a jumping It's like a jumping insect, plant hopping insect.
So did you catch that? They said evolutionists said never going to find a mechanism because they'd be useless unless it started out perfect, right? You can't have millions of mistakes building to it. It's got to work the first time. They found living gears and an insect, right? Actual functional gears, right? So that's not only a failed prediction, it's even worse because the design of gears, guess what? Everyone on planet Earth thought man invented gears. They thought gears is what? A created design, right? So now the evolutionists have to believe, they have to go around convincing people that gears are not a created design now, and that their failed predictions are just coincidence, and that all of history was a created design. That's wrong. History's wrong. Just keep believing in evolution anyway. Total fraud, total failure. That should be the end of it, folks. And notice, man created the gear, right? They didn't even realize the gear already existed, right? Thinking God's thoughts after him is what the old, scientists thought they were doing. Again, showing what? God created man in his own image. Which fits the evidence better? We already know it's not evolution, right? So God created man in his own image. Man came up with an idea that was already there, gears, right? Again, powerful. Let's look at Acts 17. Right? God that made the world and all things therein, seeing that he is Lord of heaven and earth, dwelleth not in temples made with hands, right? Now, this is key here, verse 26, and hath made of one blood all nations of men, for to dwell on all the face of the earth, and hath determined times before appointed, and the bounds of their habitation, that they should seek the Lord, if haply they might feel after him, and find him, though he be not far from every one of us. Here we see the nations, right? They're one blood. Again, genetics pretty much just devastates evolution. There's no hope for them. It's closed the door on evolution forever, and yet the evolutionists will tell you the complete opposite. They'll just lie to your face, tell you the complete opposite. All right? Again, so we see failure of evolution. But particularly in genetics, right, they know there's a population bottleneck, right? What does that mean? It means the population was cut down dramatically at some point, right? Lowering the diversity, right? Sort of like, a giant flood, right? Giant flood would cause that. Again, they just lie and say there's no evidence. It's even in your genetics, folks. And, they make predictions based on that, too. You'll see books like Traced and other things. But, so the population bottleneck. Now, genetic similarity, they'll try and use, say you're related to a chimp. They don't tell you that evolutionists made the opposite prediction. Ernst Mayr said there's not going to be any genetic similarity left after millions of years of divergence, right, from evolution. Total fraud, total lie. Again, another failure of evolution. Now, notice they don't teach that. They don't teach the failure of evolution. Now they pretend that it supports evolution the whole time if there's genetic similarity. Total lie, total fraud, folks. So not only have we proven the population bottleneck, not only have we shown that they're wrong about common design, they're wrong about genetic similarity. We have the similarities because of design, folks. Just like the gears, right? The gears are, God has made man in his own image. But they recently even did the Y chromosome, right? So if you're a male, you have an XY chromosome, the sex chromosomes that are passed down from your father, right? And evolutionists will lie and say they don't believe that a chimp gave birth to a human. That's exactly what they believe, folks. They'll say it's an imaginary chimp that gave birth to a chimp and then a human, a common ancestor. It's imaginary, right? So, again, this proves they believe a chimp gave birth to a human, because what were they trying to do? They were trying to compare the human Y chromosome that you get from your father to a chimp's Y chromosome. Now, why would you do that unless you believe that chimps gave birth to humans and they're going to have the same Y chromosome to prove evolution? Again, only a fool would believe that, but that's what they did. So they saw the Y chromosome in humans doesn't have much change across the globe in men, right? Because we're all from Noah's family. But they don't want to believe that. So they figured the Y chromosome must not change. It must not evolve much over time, right? So, based on their evolutionary beliefs, well, if the Y chromosome doesn't change much and chimps are the most related, right, that they believe, then the Y chromosome in chimps should be very similar to humans, right? Again, total failure. The evolutionists had to admit it's horrendously different. Over 50% of the genes aren't even there to be compared. It's totally different, right? Evolution falsified. Evolution falsified. You're not related to a chimp. That's the end of it, right? And then, of course, we know about the Stalin, scientist experiments where they actually tried, the evolutionists, they bred like a horse and a zebra to make a hybrid and prove they're the same kind, right? So what did they try and do immediately after, right? Tried to prove humans and chimps are the same kind. They tried artificial insemination both ways, female, male. Total failure. Proving you're not related to a chimp. So they tested it, not only in the Y chromosome, but again, those horrible unethical experiments failed again. You're not related to a chimp in any way, right? That should be the end of it. Then, right, they even had another study where they looked at genetic diversity, and it looks like all the animals are the same age. Again, totally destroying evolution. But all these we looked at are not the ones that I think are the most powerful here. And even 20 Evolutionary Blunders doesn't really talk about the most basic, obvious example. So I'm going to go to number 2, and I'm going to go to number 1, and I'm going to do a bonus one. And hopefully you'll see that's the end of evolution, right? They can't even see past the genetic bottleneck, but yet they're claiming that they can try and prove common ancestry. Now, speaking of common ancestry, the idea, by the way, we found the same gene without descent, disproving evolution, right? So they have the same gene in bats and whales, for example, and yet they can't say that a whale gave birth to a bat or vice versa. Again, so we've already scientifically proven you can have the same genes in different creatures, and that gene did not come through descent. That means all of their quote-unquote similarities, we've disproven that they're proof of common descent, folks. We've got the same gene without descent, multiple places. But let's look at the one I always pick to. I go right back to the beginning of Darwinism. Again, the Bible outlaws close relations, right? Again, we see in the beginning man is created perfect and is going downhill. Adam lived 900 years. So in the beginning, it wouldn't have been a problem. But as it goes through time, we see God eventually outlaws close relations in Leviticus, right? Darwin, again, believing evolution, decided to go against this and have close relations, and it didn't go well, right? Didn't go well. Showing the Bible correct again, but they'll just say that's an ad hominem or a personal attack on Darwin. No, because again, the evolutionists always say, where are the limits then? Show us the limits. There's one limit right there that evolution can't explain. Close relations, right? Again, they believe life came out of a rock and that mated with itself over and over. There should be no genetic limits to mating. If evolution were true, they can't explain it, right? Again, the Bible is correct. Only the Bible fits. If you've only been around a few thousand years, it's not going to be a problem if you start out perfect, live 900 years, and then as the genetics go down, then there's a problem, right? Again, there's one limit to evolution right there. They say there's no limit. There's one. And then on the other side, if you have these hybrids like a mule that are too far to the other way, now they can't, again, they can't reproduce mules like that or whatever it is, whatever hybrid it is. That's a limit on the other side. It's too varied or it's too closely related. Again, these limits shouldn't exist if evolution were true. And then we can look at even other limits, mutation. The fruit fly experiments, again, they mutated these fruit flies. He had an extra wing, couldn't fly anymore, he died, right? Again, the mutations, there's a mutation limit, he'll just die, right? So, again, there's all sorts of limits to change the evolutionists don't want to admit to, but close relations is one I wanted to point out that was not in the books. And specifically, again, let's combine this, because not only do we have Darwin example before genetics existed, not only do we have that example, but the Bible says we're all of one blood, right? And they've already proven that, but let's combine that with the population numbers, because evolutionists, right, want to say humans are around for 300,000 years, right? So that means the population would be stagnant for greater than all of human history, greater than 6,000 years. Now imagine if you had 10 people. I'm not even going to start with 2. I'm going to give them 10 to start, right? If you had 10 people intermating for 10,000 years and the number of people was only 10 people consistently throughout that time, that'd be massive incest, right? It'd be massive incest beyond anything. For 10,000 years, it'd be greater than all of history. It'd be greater incest than we've seen all throughout history. And they're telling you that happened for thousands and thousands of years. Again, there's no way, folks. The population growth numbers only fit Genesis, right? Then, if you're going to have a stagnant population of humans like this for 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, you're going to have huge, massive incest. They don't even try to explain it, folks. They use the power of imagination. Just imagine. So close relations also is the huge destruction of evolution. They say there's no limits. Well, we just named a few. And there's that famous quote, I forget what it is. A change of 3 nucleotides in your body is fatal, right? And they say like 480 million nucleotides is 1% difference on the genome. So if you change 3, you'll drop dead, right? But they say there's no limits to evolution. It's a total lie, folks. Now we'll go to the number 1. I think this one's number 1. This ends the debate. There's no way around it, right? So way back, I'll take it right back to the beginning. Darwinism, right? Darwin. The whole idea was descent with modification, right? So the animal is getting modified until it finally becomes something new, right? That's the whole idea of evolution where it started. Now, you know, the famous title of Darwin's book, The Origin of Species and Preservation of Favored Races, right? They'll try and lie and say races don't mean races. But in his book, Descent of Man, the sequel, he even talks about Australians and Fuegians or whatever as races. Australians are humans, folks. I don't know if you know that. They're humans. So he's talking about the races of men. So he's trying to use evolution to explain the differences in humans, right? And the races. Totally racist idea. They still teach it in schools. But we see what? So he's saying there's an imaginary chimp-like ancestor, which we know it's just a chimp, but they want to pretend it's something else. So they believe that humans are descended from this chimp. That means each generation, right, gets that modifications. So the ones with the most modifications from the chimp, they'll say are the most evolved, right? And the humans that they say are more animal-like, right? Again, they're racist. They'll say those are less evolved. So some races will be more evolved, some races will be less evolved based on the differences is what evolution was trying to explain, the diversity in humans. Now, this is interesting because it's directly against what Genesis teaches, that we're all from Noah and his family, one very closely related family. And again, we've already gone over the genetic bottleneck that was proven. We've already gone over the Y chromosome, right? Spoiler alert. So they looked at human genetics, right? It goes, Darwin's theory went directly against Genesis. So let's look at Darwin's quote from that book here. Darwin taught All the difficulties with classification are explained, if I do not greatly deceive myself, on the view that the natural system is founded in descent with modification, right? Again, notice the words he chose, if I do not greatly deceive myself. Yes, he does. He has greatly deceived himself. So, long story short, genetics came out. They were forced to admit what? All the races of man are one closely related family. Guess what? That means the whole premise of evolution, descent with modification, failed, right? So not only were they unable to explain the differences in humans, which, by the way, there's greater variation in humans than there are in finches' beaks. We're talking about less than 1 inch difference in beak size. Finches are just birds that Darwin saw. There's less than 1 inch difference in beak size. There's way more variety of that in humans, right? Just in the nose and the mouth and the height, all the different appearances, right? So evolution, descent with modification, could not explain the diversity in humans, went directly against Genesis, saying we're all one family. Which was correct, which was false? The Bible is correct. Evolution was totally falsified right at the beginning. As Darwin said, he greatly deceived himself, right? And that should be the end of it. Because if evolution cannot explain diversity in humans, it cannot be used to explain diversity in any creature on Earth, right? Again, they'll still try and sneak this back in. We've already disproven it. Now they'll try and say blue eyes evolved. We just disproved that a long time ago, right? Because then you would be saying, well, the blue eyes make you more evolved. You're more divergent from the chimp than other humans. It's false. We've already proven that false. Humans living across the globe are more closely related than monkeys living right next to each other, folks. The Bible is correct. You're one blood, all the nations. That means you're from Noah's family, the population bottleneck. It all proves this. Genesis, right? That's it. If descent with modification was destroyed, which it has been, that's the end of evolution. No Christian should believe it. They have no way to explain it, right? Again, God bless you and keep you. We're all one blood. I mean, genetics has completely closed the door on it. Countless frauds. Don't fall for it, folks. They have no answer. And that's not even including all the missing evidence I've already gone over. I recommend you get the book, study the Word of God, of course. Pray for wisdom and understanding. God bless you and keep you in Jesus' name. Amen.